but it is. I mean, it's not in the traditional sense, but it is. Look, all right, I'll buy.
Tell me why you think this is a hybrid.
Because it is.
Okay, let's find a definition of the word. A hybrid vehicle uses more than one form of power, typically. It combines an internal combustion engine with an electric motor, which propels said vehicle into an onward motion.
Which this does.
The electric motors in here do not drive the wheels.
The electric motor mounted between the engine and the Porsche Doppelkupplungsgetriebe transmission does, because that output goes directly to the rear wheels.
If you help an elderly lady across the road,
yes,
in the same way as Zimmer frame would,
yes,
are you a part Zimmer frame and therefore are you hybrid?
Yes.
Is Iron Man a hybrid because he's got an artificial heart?
Well, yes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
He is a hybrid. If you go into Marks and Spencer's,
yes,
you'll see normal tea and then you'll see tea infused with.
Yep, that's hybrid tea.
With mango and pomegranate.
Hybrid
this
tea.
Is an internal combustion engine infused with electricity.
Which means it's a hybrid.
It's not hybrid.
Right, so you have hybrid tea, like your lemon and chamomile and whatever, and then you've got tea hybrid. Porsche knew what they were doing when they called it the tea hybrid system, because it's like a hybrid tea.
You can call it a hybrid, but it's not a
it
proper hybrid.
911 GTS, often described as a sweet spot of the range as it gets you close to the performance of a GT with the everyday ability of a standard Carrera that the likes of you and I yearn for. It shares some hardware with the GT3 whilst retaining some of the comfort. No wonder people have always loved it. I know I did when I last drove one. Naturally, the fact that some hybrid tech has now been injected into the keen ultimate driver's choice, feathers have been ruffled and opinions have been plentiful. That tends to happen whenever Porsche does anything with electricity.
In this video, I'll be sharing with you some of my opinions on the car, but more importantly, go into reasons as to why it probably isn't the type of hybrid you may think it is. And in the case of a 911, the type of hybrid you hope it isn't. Before we dive into it, let me show you what a part of that hybrid tech actually does, with a quick demonstration. This right here is a 1987 Porsche 911 Carrera. You may recognize it, it's been on the channel before. There is a battery on board, which when you put this key into the ignition and twist, it sends a current to the starter motor, which then cranks the engine and brings the 3.2 litre engine to life. And it sounds a little something like this. And this is a 2022 911 and it goes a little something like this. And lastly, but by no means least, this is how the latest iteration of a 911 goes.
The electric motor housed within the gearbox performs the tasks of the starter and alternator, thereby saving weight. As for the rest of the hybrid tech, we'll get to shortly. But first, what about our press car?
This particular press car is finished off in the ice grey metallic, which I happen to really like. This has had £11,000 worth of options thrown at it, including the tinted LED matrix headlights, as well as the hugely comfortable carbon bucket seats, which are impossible to get into. This GTS totals just over £148,500, and it also has something called a non-smokers package, which has made me laugh because, I mean, what did you do? Just remove the ashtray? Now we mustn't forget, this isn't just a Porsche with some new hybrid tech. It's also a nip and tuck, or a facelift as it's more commonly known. So bar the hybrid, what else is new? The daytime running lights as well as the indicators have now been moved into the main headlight, and consequently there's no secondary daytime running lights down here. With the lights gone, that's allowed these active flaps to be installed, which open and close depending on cooling requirements. Aesthetically, I'm a little on the fence.
The bumpers have been reshaped and the light bar has been redefined to give a smoother, minimalist look. For the most part, welcome stuff. Is it better? Well, it's the same but different, I suppose, in typical facelift fashion.
First thing you're going to notice when you get in the car, the ignition actually just comes on. Much like an EV. Now, we're on private grounds at the moment, so as far as I'm concerned, there's only one way to vacate the property. Wow. we'll get into the 0 to 62 mile an hour times a little later in the video. Now, a few of the things that Porsche should have perhaps left alone include the engine start-stop button, which has been widely covered already, and how it's been preferred to that stalk thing which used to mimic a key, like we saw in the opening scene in the GT3. Now, I'm not hugely cut up about it, but what I will say is, at least make it a bit nicer. It's just a bit bland. And then there's the physical tack, or the lack of. They've got rid of it. Now, it's nice, the screen does exactly what it needs to do, it's perfectly fine. But again, in this class of car, I just want a bit more character, I want a bit more personality. I want there to be a physical tack designed by a man or a woman with an Italian or a German name. I want it to be intricate or beautiful or just stylish maybe. Bring back some of the dials. I don't mean all of it. Obviously my tyre pressures and my fuel level, that can all be digital. I liken this to a digital watch versus a beautiful timepiece. There's a time and place for both. In here I want it to be the latter, or maybe just give people the option. In terms of performance, it's up on power as well as torque, two areas where it really matters. 610 Newton meters of torque and 541 brake horsepower. Those are pretty big numbers for a car that's supposed to be the middle child. If you're a little unsure about the difference between power and torque, power is how quickly you hit a bend, and torque is how hard you're pulled out of that bend. This particular car is 50 kilograms heavier than the 4 GTS, which we reviewed last year. No prizes for guessing where that extra weight has come from. And this car is 0.3 of a second quicker to 62 miles an hour. Bear in mind, that car had the chrono package as well. However, all of those numbers are courtesy of a spec sheet. A friend and fellow YouTuber, Joe Achilles, had the very same car on loan a few weeks ago, and he managed to launch it to 62 miles an hour in a gnat's whisker over 2.7 seconds. There's more. Let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, that this is the rear-wheel drive only model. But as you know, it's no longer just the petrol power that gets that performance on the road. Of course, the GTS retains its flat 6 engine and the 3-litre unit found elsewhere in the range, except in here, the bore and stroke have increased by 97 and 81 millimeters respectively, upping the displacement to 3.6 litres. On its own, the single turbo engine produces 478 bhp and 570 Newton meters of torque. But of course, that's before the hybrid system comes into play. The turbo has an electric motor on its shaft, and it gives you the type of responsiveness and the boost which is only second to an EV, instant. And then there's the electric motor between the engine and the 8-speed Porsche Doppelkupplungs PDK transmission, which adds 54 brake horsepower and 150 Newton meters of torque, and then time and space travel is possible. Unlike the Mercedes GLC 63 SE, this isn't a plug-in hybrid. All of the electricity that it needs comes from the regen, the turbo, as well as the engine. It only has a 1.9 kilowatt-hour capacity battery on board, and whilst that's enough power to start the motor, power the air conditioning compressor, as well as other ancillaries, it cannot power the entire car on electric alone, which between me and you is the basis of my whole argument as to why this isn't a proper hybrid. But that debate continues at the end of the video. If you're enjoying this video and you haven't already done so, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll link our Instagram channel somewhere in the corner as well. Make sure you give us a follow there too. So I think we've established the fact that it's not a hybrid in the traditional sense. When we think of hybrids, I think of a car like the Toyota Prius, and I think efficiency first and foremost. But what the GTS does is use traditional fuel saving tech to reward you for using more fuel. And that looks a little something like this. Wow, this thing is a bullet. it's potent, it's poised, it's a kick up the proverbial arse. The bucket seats, yep, now they make sense. This thing pulls like a train, especially between 50 and 70 miles an hour. The way it gallops, the way it gathers speed is astonishing. I am now one with the seat. We are fully integrated. The way the power is delivered is just awesome. There is a hint of understeer if you take the bends a little too enthusiastically, but in real world driving conditions, as far as I'm concerned, that's a non-issue. Grip is available in abundance. Given all this extra power, given the lack of all-wheel drive in the case of this particular press car, Porsche decided that one way to get more contact onto the tarmac would be to install some wider tyres. So this particular car has been adorned with the Goodyear Supersport R tyres, which have a 315 section. They are girthy. Earlier in the video, I placed importance of the increase to the power and the torque numbers. In hindsight, it probably isn't. You could quite easily shave off 10% off the power, 10% off the torque, and you'd still be sitting in a nuclear weapon. That is the GTS. Yes! But that's just a byproduct of the fusion between electric power and fossil fuel grunt. In terms of real world application, well, overtaking, for instance, is instant. As there's so much contact with the tarmac, one of the byproducts of that is that you get a lot of road noise. When it comes to the ride, this is the appropriate time to probably talk about it, because these roads that I'm driving on at the moment, they're just so bumpy. They've got so many cracks and potholes, and you're just forever trying to avoid them. And it's just not a very even surface. Would it be a deal breaker if you're going to use it every day? Quite possibly. I mean, look, it's not going to shatter your spine or rattle your teeth. But if I can make an assumption, if I'm spending the best part of 150 grand on a car, I probably have other cars that I can tap into when doing such driving. Firm but fair is probably an adequate summarization. As for the steering, it feels accurate, it feels sharp, it feels natural. There's not too much in the way of feel, and to an enthusiast such as myself, it's no bad thing. Although I appreciate the purists among us may demand a little bit more feel. Further enhancing the 911's reputation as being one of the most, if not the most practical car in the world, is the tables and chairs from the intro. The way that I would characterize this 911 is that it has more of a battery / electric influence than a hybrid that you might be familiar with. We've established the GTS cannot be driven on EV alone. Instead, it acts as a support mechanism to the internal combustion engine. As we saw at the start, the 400-volt system cranks the engine, so it starts instantly. We know that the acceleration is instant. There's no turbo lag. The electric motor takes care of that. So essentially, what the hybrid turbo does is be prepared, be ready to go before it even knows it's going to be summoned. So anytime, any place, any gear, wherever you find yourself in the rev range, if you get an itch, the scratch is on hand. Speaking of which, that's pretty much been the theme of this car. Everything is instantaneous, and that's why the hybrid tech has been brought in. I mean, yes, it has something to do with the emissions, but it doesn't have much to do with the emissions, really. I mean, look, if anyone at the EU asks, that is the official party line. But this has almost the identical amount of carbon leaving its exhaust pipe as a 640 PS Turbo S. Going back to a point I made earlier in the video about the engine starting very quickly, of course that's not a benefit in itself, but what is a benefit, when driven normally, I'm yet to experience, feel, see, notice any signs that this has had some electric interference. Because the GTS doesn't have an EV drive mode, you don't have to worry about the internal combustion engine and the electric motor playing tennis with each other to switch it from EV and ICE mode. So there is no transitioning between the two. They work in perfect harmony and they're integrated seamlessly. So not only is the joy of driving a 911 still there in my opinion, but doesn't take much to forget that it's even there in the first place. I'll include myself in this, and I'll go as far as to say that 9 times out of 10, people wouldn't be able to tell that this car has had hybrid implants. For all intents and purposes, you'd be hard pushed to recognize this as anything more than a very potent, very sharp, poised, and incredibly rapid 911 GTS. Would the average person be able to tell it apart from a regular GTS? I'm not so sure. But I can all but guarantee that not only would those people reap the benefits of this, but they'd welcome it too. And that's where I'll leave it. I have a metal plate in my ankle. Am I hybrid?
Yes, you are.
How?
Wait, how large is the
It's
plate?
a few inches, thanks for asking.
Okay. And because you've got a part Terminator leg, that does make you a hybrid.
I'm not a hybrid.
Well, you are.
If I didn't have that...
I am pure flesh and muscle. Given that this is the archetypal driver's car, this is the greatest sports car in the world, and I should know because I've never driven one.
Much like many people in the comments section.
What is wrong with having something that increases the performance, increases the response times, gets you from, here to there on the horizon on a fabulous stretch of B road that little bit quicker?
I don't have a problem with it.
If it enhances the drivetrain, if it enhances the output, what's there not to like?
I'm all for it. I'm just saying it's not the type of hybrid that people assume it is. People already hate it because it's hybrid.
Yeah, but in reality...
They've never even been in the same postcode as one.
Hybrid, by definition, which it is, in reality it's like a mild hybrid plus. Although Audi have that trademark, don't they?
VM hybrid, very mild hybrid. My idea of a hybrid is that it can drive on electric, it can drive on petrol or diesel.
Mm-hmm.
That cannot. Therefore, it's not a proper hybrid.
But does it need to?
No, it doesn't. I'm just making the point. This one doesn't even say hybrid on it, so...
Doesn't need to.
Exactly, because it's not.
No, but it
and
is.
we'll end on that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.
He's wrong.